That's no moon. It's a space station.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show. As you may notice, Aaron is not with me again today. So his mother has cancer and she is currently about to transition. So he is there by her side right now. She's been moved into hospice and is moments away or days away from making the transition. So that's where his focus is right now. But he is here in spirit and we send him our best. And I would like to take a moment and just ask everyone to send prayers to him and his family during this time, because it's a rough time. And as we know, those things are not easy. They're very difficult situations. So prayers to Aaron and his family. Okay, before we get started, I also want to just remind everybody that tickets are available for our conference. As everybody knows, we host a conference every year in Grafton, Illinois. It is called Rebels of Disclosure. This year it will be May 12th through the 15th. And we have a great lineup. I'll actually share my screen briefly to show you guys, who we have on the ticket for this year. So we have Zaysan, who is a Plagarian contactee with an incredible testimony, Lily Nova, Patrick Riley, Laura Van Tyne, Daryl James, Secret Space Program whistleblower. We've recently added Melissa Morton, Sean David Morton's husband. If you know Sean, he just recently passed as well. So she's going to be carrying on his legacy and sharing some information that he didn't get to share while he was still alive. Alex Bloom, Susan Manwich, Ed Spina, Leah Ray, Nikki Anna Jones, Arcturus Ra, and Sherry Divban. It's a fantastic lineup. Tickets are still available. You can find all that information at journeytotruth.online. That link is below in the description. So today we are excited to kick off the new year with Gene Decode once again. Actually, I think I was talking with Aaron and I realized that we always have Gene on right around the new year. So figured it would be a good time to just keep that pattern going and ask him some questions about what he sees going on right now, because there is no shortage of things to talk about, as we know. And first, before we jump into this, welcome back to the show, Gene.
Thank you for inviting me, Tyler. It's great to be here. Prayers to Aaron. Sorry you couldn't be here. So you're both such fine gentlemen, but this is the nature of the situation, and it's hard to get the information about what Mel Gibson said on Joe Rogan that does work. So I recently had a situation myself, and I used that, and I do cleansing every 3 weeks and 3 or 4 or 5 days. I don't let it go to 28 days because from the shedding, the nanotech self-assembles and it hatches out inside your intestinal tract. And so I did that. And so for the first time after using that, when I got to the Epsom salt part of the cleanse, usually by that time, after 2 quarts of salt water, I'm going completely clear when I have my movements. In this case, when I got to the Epsom salts from the regular salt, I had what looked like black dirt come out of me. And so that's obviously the nanotech and other materials. I was burning in my entire digestive tract like I was on fire for the last half year. A lot of the time, that's all gone within a week of doing what Mel Gibson said, the stuff that he said with Joe Rogan. And it does work. So, but like we were talking before the show, it's hard to convince the normies, to not go the traditional route of the cheme stuff and the radioactive stuff and all of that. It's unfortunate. I have another person I know that lost their wife. So same thing. Couldn't convince them to go this route. And it's just, I saw a military document that's been sent to me that the population of the United States, I don't know if this is accurate, but this document showed it will be dropping by the end of this year to 80% less than it is now. So, and worldwide is 70%. So, and the Davos group is saying the same thing, that the population of the world is going to reduce drastically. So they're, did this the Georgia Guidestone's goal. And it looks like a lot of that is true. So back to you, Tyler. Thank you.
Right. Unfortunately, yeah. It's like we learn about this stuff when the damage has already been done. And this is something that, has been the case for years now. These programs, by the time they get disclosed or declassified to us, the damage has been done. The people have, we're just left in recovery mode. And that's where we're at now. So, okay, yeah, we find out about it after it's too late, but that's what we're here doing. That's why we're here doing what we're doing, spreading this information on shows like this. And there is no shortage of things going on right now. I'm just going to list some of the stuff I wrote down just because, like, it's, we're barely into the new year, and we've had the New Jersey drones, the mystery fog, the LA wildfires, potentially clearing out a path for a 15-minute city in 2028. We have the Stephen Greer whistleblowers just getting ready to be released and sharing all this information about crash retrievals, including hybrid breeding programs and human trafficking, which I wasn't actually expecting to hear them say, but that's what they're going to be talking about, is including living and non-living biologics, or whatever they call them. They can't say beings for some reason. And then we are right on the brink of Trump's inauguration, and he's talking about, merging Canada with the US and potentially, purchasing Greenland, and maybe even doing the same with Mexico and pushing that border down. Kash Patel and the Trump administration is hammering down on the deep state. Israel and Hamas have declared a ceasefire and a hostage release. RFK Jr. is making America healthy again, removal of fluoride in food dyes, and a whole bunch of other things, including cures for cancer, are going to be very publicly known, I think, in the coming year. Major shifts in the financial system, and, future of space exploration is in the spotlight again. So we can cover any one of those things, but I guess since we're right on the, days away from the inauguration, maybe we can start there. And Gene, I'd like to get your opinion on what's actually happening behind the scenes with this transition of power, and what does it mean for our country?
Oh my gosh, it's hard to like you said, to cover everything. It's so massive. So with Trump putting in the External Revenue Department and the tariffs, want to remind people, before the Federal Reserve, we have on my website several decodes on the Federal Reserve and the Titanic, and how that took the United States, that with Nixon finally off the gold standard, and they wanted to take it all the way to central bank digital currency, digital currency. And so this would get them complete control of everything you could purchase or not. They could delineate precisely through some credit score, something, social credit score, what you could buy, where, and it completely hides everything they do. So there would be no way to track all of these deep black projects. And now with Dr. Stephen Greer, the technologies that the whistleblowers are talking about, like the TR3s that have a power supply that is about the size of a shoebox, that develops terawatts, not megawatts, not gigawatts, terawatts of power from 0-point energy, the Kashmir effect, going into the quantum level. There's, from what I understand, 10 to the 95th grams per centimeter squared energy at every Planck distance. So they originally normalized that out of equations, because when they measured that actually in Russia, the group that it's named after, they found that much energy, which is at the Planck distance. They said that can't be, and it had come up in formulas before, and they did what's called normalization, where they figured out if that were in a cubic centimeter, how much to remove from all the equations. So when they look out in space and see a vast expansion of space taking place and it's accelerating, they go into this dark matter and dark energy that doesn't really exist at all. It's made up, it's the dark forces wanting to have credit for stuff.
Right.
It's actually just gravitation and electromagnetism and the Kashmir effect of energy and matter coming in at the quantum level. And They said that's more energy than the entire universe converted of all mass added to all the energy. That's impossible. I mean, all of that I think is 10 to the 50th somewhere in there, and this is 10 to the 95th power. How is that possible? So they normalized it out. It's in physics. There's two types of infinity. Something that's very, very, very infinitely small in an equation, you can just discard it because it's not relevant. Something that's massively huge, that's called a nasty infinity. And so they normalize it out. So then when they look at all that expansion, because you removed it from the equations, you can't explain it. So you have to come up with things like dark matter and dark energy. It's the same thing they did with the strong and weak nuclear forces. And now the color force is to name things that they don't understand. And all you're seeing is gravity near a black hole, a mini black hole. And so this is all of these technologies tap into all of these forces and what it is really is, and that's going to be coming out. The free energy is going to be coming out. Anti-gravity was, as Dr. Greer has said, was conquered in 1952 by the U.S. By the NAZIs. It was done in 1930. So they had a deep space program. So plus Dr. Greer has said he actually saw a limb regrown in the dump, and I'm aware of that technology as well. So that healing technology will be coming out as well. There's so much to look forward. The IRS, I feel, will be relegated to the depths of the deepest pit, and it'll be the ERS. Tariffs is how the country was funded up until the Federal Reserve, as I was talking when I started. And we had a surplus, like China recorded a $1 trillion surplus for the last year. $1 trillion. That is phenomenal. We'd be doing the same if we weren't in just donating billions and billions to the welfare state that we support called Ukraine. That is not about supporting democracy. That's far from a democracy. If we're supporting democracy, we'd be helping Russia, because that place is like what burned down in the Palisades area. And we can go into that too, why that fires and all of those are happening. And so there's a lot to look forward to in 2025. And there's going to be a lot of pain and grieving as well. There's going to be a jubilee mixed with incredible amounts of people going and terrible things. The deep state will not go quietly into the dark. They will fight till there's nothing left of them. That's what we see in California. We now see it in Argentina as well. Back to you, Tyler. Thank you.
Right. And yeah, you made some fantastic points there. It's not going to be, like you said, like there's going to be casualties because we are at war, whether people like that term or not. And if you don't, see it physically manifested, this has been a war for our soul for quite some time now. And we're seeing the results of that. And people have made decisions and been mind controlled and manipulated into doing things to their body, and that's ultimately shortening their lifespan. And we're gonna see loss of life. And I think as every civilization nears an end, the machine consumes itself. And I think it's kind of an inevitable cycle, but we have to live through it and experience it and learn the hard way so we make sure it doesn't happen again. So I want to go back to, talking about this technology that, it's very clear that part of this disclosure is them trying to, figure out a way how to release this technology to us in a safe way without really giving us all that they got, but kind of like letting us know that, yeah, we do have this stuff. It's, it's not given to you guys because it's a matter of national security. But going back to the Nazis and whenever they were discovering this anti-gravitic or directional gravitic propulsion in their Haunebu UFOs with the Vril Society, I'm reading the Sands of Time right now, volume 6, and it talks about, it's the Vril Diamond Diaries in their true form, not even changed in their original format about what actually happened. And it was whenever they eventually built one of these flying saucers and turned it on and got it to work, they couldn't even, they still didn't understand how it was powering itself, where it was drawing the power from. It ran for 2 years without shutting off. They couldn't even turn it off. And this, I think, Robert Schumann, the guy who created or discovered the Schumann resonance, he was involved in this process, and it was this UFO that actually inspired him to start measuring the frequency of the planet, because he was trying to learn where this craft was drawing its energy from, and that's when he discovered the Schumann resonance, and that's how we got that. But it's ultimately coming from the ether. It's a scalar energy that's always exist everywhere at all times. And, Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, meaning quantum entanglement. It's all there. So I think there's some really exciting, some things to be excited about as far as moving into the future with this technology. Did you have anything you wanted to say about that before we move on?
Yeah, so with the Bell Project up at the Hinge during World War II, they had even trouble shutting that down as well. They had all kinds of spooky kind of stuff happen. It's, even to this day, just like what happened in the Montauk Project, they had things manifesting out of dark dimensions, we'll put it, creatures and things just appearing out of nowhere. So it took a lot of manipulation and learning the technology to just use it for faster than light traveling, like the Alcubierre Fawning Drive and those things for faster than light travel. And also they're now able to use it they're starting to use it for teleportation for quite a while. They're starting to admit they can do teleportation at the atomic level, where they've transported atoms from one place on one planet to another place, like the moon or on Earth. They have had teleportation for quite a while. Things like stargates and portals, like what we saw with MH370. It's pretty obvious with the three crafts zooming around it. They opened a portal and moved it over Diego Garcia, and then landed that and put it in the dome under Diego Garcia because of the technology of the room temperature superconductive microchips that were on there that allowed for them to get Trump in 2016 because they could steal back the election after the deep state stole it. And so we've seen the same thing in 2024 now. So with Trump coming in, the only states that were blue and that won were ones that had no ID or an ID without a picture, which is no ID.
Right.
And who can't fake? I had fake IDs, friends with fake. I didn't have one because I didn't need it. I was in the military at the time overseas, but before I was of age, I had many friends in high school that could make fake IDs with no picture and go and buy liquor and those things, what they did at the time. I mean, that's anybody and now with the internet, it's anybody with techie ability can fake it. So in these places that Harris won, Mr. Kamal won, those are the only way they won, is the illegals using fake IDs. So it would have been a completely red wave of every state, every county, everything everywhere. So the technologies of the solid state devices that are superconductors at a nanotech level and microchips, and plus the teleportation, plus the free energy, plus the anti-grav, all of this is going to come out with the whistleblowers. The deep state's trying to steal it and trying to do what has been named, it's not what they call it, but what has been named by the common media, the mainstream media, as Operation Bluebeam, and they've tried some test runs on it in South America and in places like Estonia and the Baltic states and those things, and it didn't come off very well because the shockability of people about that stuff, I think they've waited too long. They've so preconditioned people about non-terrestrial groups that, yeah, there's good ones and bad ones, and okay, which ones are these? People are just going, which ones are these? They're not all freaking and running around like they did with Orson Welles' broadcast back on radio where it interrupted like it was live, and there's, Martians and all of this, and people were saying they were actually seeing them, because if you put something in somebody's head and they believe it enough, they will actually see it even if it's not there. So now that they've waited this long, people are ready for disclosure. They're ready to meet non-terrestrials for the most part. There are ones that didn't give hope up on this planet for the human race and, the human species. And, it's easy to do that with the way we are. And, we turn on each other. We allow ourselves to be played. You look at Congress and Senate, how many of them are not under control of the deep state? It's probably, 1%?
Right.
Pretty, but, the good thing is it's all being cleared up, and amnesty is being given for people to come out with the information. It's hard when, they implant stuff hack into your computer, put stuff in. You've got all these trolls following good people around, making up all kinds of stuff. I mean, pretty much everybody gets it that's out here. If you haven't got it, I'd be surprised. I was watching a video of the most brilliant man, highest IQ ever measured, and his theory on the universe. And he was saying how he's attacked by trolls. He's tired of it. Everybody gets infiltration. The deep state infiltrates and knows, because they had Project Looking Glass, what groups to infiltrate before they even happen. So, this is the nature of what Trump is cleaning up in the swamp. And he has said, I caught them all. Very recently. So that means exactly what that means. A lot of those homes in the Palisades, if you look at the vehicles, you have a whole lot of collector vehicles that are burned. These people are, a $30 million home is nothing for them to replace. And to hire drivers to drive those vehicles safely, or to do what Paris Hilton did or tried to do, to hire our own firefighter brigade. So they have massive income and massive wealth. And what's that is all about is now, as that's cleared out, will become incredibly obvious to everyone. And there's other things that what's under there is going to be tied to more hidden technologies that's under LA too. So ancient stuff deeper down. Back to you, Tyler.
Right. So, okay, let's focus on these fires a little bit more then. Who do you think, now this is the whole controversy, right? Because I've heard theories like this is another deep state false flag attack. I've also heard theories that it's like the white hats trying to flush out the rats, I don't think the white hats would intentionally burn down an area to do that, but we don't know we don't know what's happening behind the scenes, and which moves are being made, and their reasoning for everything that they do. But what is your opinion as far as who actually started the fires? Do you think it was a deep state effort?
I think it started just for the Palisades and Malibu area, for the ones that have already been gitmoed, that already said they had 19, et cetera, that we saw wearing the tracking device that's looks like a foot cast, 100 feet and all of that. That's why those cars weren't moved. They weren't there. You see many homes with no vehicles there. They weren't there. They either left beforehand or they've already been gitmoed. So there's that. However, then, of course, the deep state was ready, and they did stepped in and expanded it because, like you, I don't think they would allow innocent people and all the fire insurance being canceled and all that. That's all deep state, and it's all in the 15-minute city area, and the high-speed rail that's going exactly through all the rest of the areas of the single unit homes that they want to put high rises and 15-minute city stuff, and for also the high-speed rail for the 2028 Olympics. It all fits perfectly, and it's exactly what we saw in Lahaina, and nothing's been done there. No one remembers it anymore, I guess. There's no building, no nothing. Nobody's allowed in there still to this day. It's still a devastated area. And we look at the money going to Ukraine, and we look at the money going to these people. Again, it's $700 something again. They use the same thing as North Carolina, same thing as Lahaina. Well, billions go to Ukraine and billions went to the Middle East and Israel for the doing what they did to the Gaza. So I did, like you, agree. I don't think the alliance would do. They had contingencies not to have it spread, but then Smokey Joe flew in, and so the planes couldn't drop anything. They had a air lockdown to lock down the airspace. Then on top of that, I mean, they could have dropped salt water. The ocean's right there. And then you can clean and flush that out. But they're saying, it'll contaminate the soil. Well, more than all the debris and the burning cars and all of this chemicals and all of that stuff, not even close, as Trump would say. So it's revealing all of the tunnel systems. They're connecting all of those homes, P. Diddy's home, all of them, the Playboy Mansion, to a vast underground network. And so, there are at least 24 children that have been rescued from those tunnels during this time. And then that's tied to deeper tunnels that I talked about long time ago on Linda Paris, with a reptilian city that was found way back decades, over half a century ago now, underneath LA. And so that's advanced technologies and things that line that they have been holding on to. And so this is all part of disclosure as well, let alone the homes that burned. They've already been in there. Those people that may get both, the alliance has already been in there, Trump and all that, and the FBI has already been in there and grabbed all of the proof. So the deep state's wanting it to be burned, and they're okay with it being burned, but big surprise, deep state. All the information is already gone.
It's interesting because, we see Lahaina and North Carolina and the Palisades, even Paradise, California, when that happened, and the other fires, objectively, they're beautiful areas, right? And there's a lot of beautiful things about the land there. But it's interesting if you kind of zoom out from a grander perspective, it seems like these areas that are burning are actually it's like the planet doing some sort of purge, because they're actually the darkest areas energetically because of what's going on there with the deep state and underground tunnels and the trafficking and all that stuff. So it is very much like saging your home. It's like purging the land. There is, yes, there's loss of life and loss of homes. And like I said, there's some very beautiful things about every place that burned. But energetically, maybe we could look at this as it's being cleared out. And, maybe the 15-minute city doesn't get implemented and something different happens with this transition of power. And, they're going to always tell us their plans, so we co-create that reality and manifest it for them. So they want us to believe that's the case. But what if we can change that? What if we shift our mindset and don't allow that to happen? And I think it's anyone's guess what's really around the corner as far as disclosure and exposure of these truths whenever Trump gets in.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that we can change that. And so I've been doing this for years of envisioning. Individuals and groups can come together and envision something wonderful replacing that. And
Right.
Elon's talking about growing homes. So you could have crystalline technology homes that are grown, that are beautiful living organisms of crystalline beautiful structures and things like this, like they have in the inner earth with the Argarthans and the Shambhalans, and several other groups do this as well. And they, the Alliance has ships that are grown in space too, that are sentient beings.
Yeah, so Elon said that actually?
Yes.
Well, I didn't know that, but that's incredible if that's the direction that he's thinking, because we know this stuff is possible. And yeah, exactly. It's very reminiscent of the inner earth civilizations or the craft that they were here grown in space. I did not know that. So I'll keep my eye out for that. So, okay, what is your opinion on Elon? Because he's such a mysterious figure. Some people claim he's not even human. He's an ET, maybe a cyborg or synthetic. He's been replaced. He's a clone. He was deep state, then he was approached by the alliance, and he's changed sides. Is any of that true?
I feel it's one of two. because of the drastic change of who he was to who he is. He's either a cyborg or he found God in Christ like I did. I was, before I came online, I had issues like all of us do. And when I was young, I had issues, and I found God. And then just before I came online, Christ actually came to me, and I changed my life around. So I feel that anybody can do that, and they can envision beautiful things and beautiful futures. And like what Elon's saying, Lockheed Martin also has technology to grow craft that can go faster than light. So those technologies are in place on this planet by regular, everyday, scientific, minded, very intelligent individuals that are in the deep state, technology scientists that can find God in Christ and come back and be healed and, do a little bit of repenting and then come back. And that's the gift of Christ. And that's how all of this can be turned around. And, Trump is very solid Christian. A lot of people say, he went to the Wailing Wall, he wears yarmulke, all this other stuff. If you're at his level, or he was in these groups, you do not get to be a president unless you've been an insider. And you can't burn it down from the inside if you're not on the inside. As in, I'm talking about burning down the deep state and ending it. And so, like Mata Hari and other people, they had to do extremely distasteful things against their morality and against their heart and their soul. But it's the only way we can get this horrific, deep, dark, satanic evil off of this planet. You've got to infiltrate it from the inside and then change it from the inside so that you expel the negative alien agenda from the top that controls it, and then all the way down to those that are getting paid off to what is as they call crypto, crypto sapiens, but the Homo carpensis, which are a group that's been hiding that there are two types. They're what is called Khazarian Mafia. They're not originally from here. Their genetics are divergent from anything that's here. They have either a tall pointed head, or there are melon-headed ones. So even Akhenaten of that group, and yet he found the one and only God of all creation as well. So even within that group, we can see that they're even within the Alpha Draco, we're of two primes that actually found Christ. So anybody can do that, and anybody can come back. There's no such thing as somebody lost beyond all hope. So I feel in the case of Elon, it's one of the two, and it's really obvious he's not the person. Same thing with Putin. The guy that was in the KGB 40 years ago is not who's running Russia. He loves that country. He stands for Christian Orthodox, like they have Russian Orthodox, Christian Orthodox, talks about God and Christ, and he talks about how the American people and the Russian people have a lot in common, just not our rulers, who are really nasty and evil and Satanists and all these things. And, they worship Satan. He said it openly. Right. And so it's pretty obvious. You look at the narrative of people like Blinken and things. We did everything right in Ukraine, because they can never admit to their psychopathic narcissists that anything that happens that is not right is anything to do with them. They do everything right. So this is just what has to be expelled from this planet and is in the process. In that war, that's how it looks. There are fatalities on all sides. Back to you, Tyler. Thank you.
Right. And it's interesting because, well, for one, I agree 100% with it has to be taken down from the inside. There's a book out there called 334 Lies. It's written by the former head chair of the Illuminati. He was actually a 41st degree Mason. And he left and essentially escaped and wrote this book. And it is kind of a very disturbing book because it's from the mind of one of these people. But he says in his own words, the only way, literally the only way to take it down is from the inside, because you have to know how these people think. because they are psychopaths, right? And they actually don't believe that there's anything wrong with what they're doing. That's the problem. That's why they'll never admit it, because they don't see anything wrong with it. They've been so groomed and programmed. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing that everything's finally starting to surface, and people are being exposed and things are being cleaned up. But I think we're in for a rocky ride, and there's not going to be it's not going to go without pushback, and I would expect to see that in the coming days for sure. um you mentioned inner earth, and this is just something I find very interesting. So we probably should have started with this. And I did want to have you let our audience know even like who you were, because we have new people listening every day. So you have a background in the military as a Navy SEAL, and I just find it very fascinating that you have come from that world and have been exposed to, and not only believe in it, but know about these classified programs, inner Earth civilizations, deep space programs, all of that. And I would be curious to, pick your brain about what you've been told or what you know about the inner Earth civilizations.
Yes, so clarify for you, I was a high non-commissioned officer in the U.S. Navy. I went on my first submarine was Special Forces Navy SEALs. And so I got very interested in that. It was a diesel submarine, and in those, the qualification path is extremely hard. And so I didn't have time to do anything but that until I was qualified. I was a lettered in cross country in high school and things, and very, mountain climber, rock climber, skier, since I was able to walk, and a very fit person. And so when I got into the military in the Navy, volunteered to be a SEAL, but at that time you had to have 20/20 vision without correction. So they didn't allow it. Was during Vietnam. And so I went on a Special Forces Navy SEAL submarine, and I was enthralled watching them train. So on my second submarine, when I went back through electronics school, I went to a SSBN, ballistic missile nuclear submarine, and I immediately stationed out of Hawaii. You pick up the ship in Guam, you have 2 crews, blue, gold, and you switch out crews and off crew. At that time in my career at a lower rank, I had much more time, and so when I got back to Hawaii after my first patrol on what they call a patrol, where you take a submarine at sea for missile launch notification at any time for 3 months, you have 3 months off after that. So I immediately went to the Pearl Harbor people for the, that run the gym and all of that stuff. And I said, is there a high-end martial artist like Navy SEAL that I could train with? Because I don't want regular dojo martial arts. I want the real thing. And they said, amazingly, your timing is pretty incredible. There's a guy teaching in a Quonset hut just outside the base towards the ferry landing. And I said, where and how do I find him? So, I immediately began classes with him. He was immediately, because the day I watched, the first time I went, I just sat and watched quietly in the back to make sure it's what I want. And that's, for people have asked me, how do you know what martial arts and what instructor do that? To sit and watch a class quietly and to see if there's all kinds of medals and stuff all over the wall and trophies, or if they're about teaching the art and it's not about, presto belts all the way, rainbow belts and all of these many, many belts. So, I sat in the back, and he then came back and he said, you're very quiet, very respectful. I saw you bow when you come in, all this. And he said, are you interested? I said, yes. And he said, tell me what it took to, get a gi, get this, get that. So the day I was going to start, my car came in, and I rode my bike down to, when I was pick it up at the piers, and when I crossed the alleyway, a car clipped my back of my bike, and I slid on my wrist band I wear when I'm biking until I got halfway across the bridge, and then I slid on my thigh and tore half the skin off from my knee to my hip. I tore all the skin off on the outside, so I just pulled my bike out of the road, went down into the Alloway Canal. The tide was in, and I washed it out, and then I went and picked to the bathroom when I got to the pier and washed out with soap and water, wrapped it with a towel, picked up my car, threw the bike in the back of the car, and went to class. And I put on my gi. Of course, it's white, and halfway through, we're training and doing what were called, grab arts, where a person grabs you and you do a series of techniques. And he came up and he goes, stop, come here. And he said, who did that to you? Did what? He goes, look at the side of your right side of your gi. And it was bloody, the whole right side. And he goes, come in the back. And I go, no, I just had a small biking accident. And he goes, small? And had me take my gi down. And he goes, holy smoke. And he goes, let me tape that on, I'm a SEAL and I know how to stop the bleeding right away and all that. So he did all that. And he said, you're going to go a long way. So after we're done, I want to talk to you personally. So he took me as his personal, kind of like what they call a Padawan in martial arts, similar, like in Star Wars, for the rest of his life until he transitioned as well. So that was 76 to 87. I had him as my personal instructor. And within 2 years, I was teaching his class and running the class. And in 87, that's when I got my first black belt under him. And then I came back to Hawaii and trained with him from 90 to 92 in my last tour there to when he transitioned in 92. So that's how I got into SEALs. So that's the clarification of who I am and what it is who I am as a martial artist. After all those years, I've had people, when I had my sea bag and my children's wives in Travis Air Force Base, set the sea bag, 90-pound sea bag down to fly space A, and the guy came up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder and said, what type of martial arts do you teach? Do I have a sight on my back? He goes, no, everything you do, every way you move. And that's for those that do martial arts and want to really learn from it, make sure that you think about it, and every move and everything you move, it becomes who you are. Right. So you never lose it. And so in all of that, going back to where we were, while I was, that then put me in a path for being on Special Forces submarines. So my third submarine was a kind of cop submarine where we had a spook on board. And by that time, I was in a high non-commissioned rank. And he came to me after all of the briefings, even the war room briefing, and he said, we're going to be loading gear. I need to talk to you personally on the submarine that your division is going to be connecting up. And I'm like really confused when he told me what we're connecting. I'm like, submarines aren't supposed to be doing those kind of things. From my understanding, this is for Cold War. And he goes, yeah, okay, whatever. Just do it. And so it became quite obvious during that op, I was having to plot where every submarine on Earth was. And all the Soviet submarines, at that time was the Soviet Union. And I'm looking and I'm going, we know where all the Charlies and the Victors and the Hen-class hotels, Echoes, Novembers, all of this are. So they obviously know where all ours are too, because we share technology. I know Kissinger sold them the lace so that their ballistic missiles could hit something besides the broadside of a state. They could hit, have a ability to aim the missile and have it very precisely do what they want it to do. Otherwise, they're not a viable enemy. So I've become aware that probably the Cold War is a farce. And he goes, yeah, it's a complete farce. We share everything. And so while we were out there, we were doing things. And because of the amount of time in sonar and in control room, when you're there, you have speakers that hear all of what's going out through the hydrophones, everything that's going outside the ship in the oceans. And I became aware of what all the oceans of the world sound like. So at a certain time, the submarine did a certain thing up in a certain area of the upper latitudes of the oceans. And then shortly after that, I heard something come back from the seafloor, which is bizarre. That was not organic. And then suddenly, shortly after that, I was aware I didn't have to plot where submarines were anymore, kind of obvious. I would go to radio, and the one radioman with my clearance, like with a spook, would hand me the message of where everything is, and I'd plot it. That stopped, and I was aware the ocean didn't sound right. I went to the guy. I go, I'm not plotting today? He goes, no. I go, what's wrong with the ocean? It's broken. He goes, what do you mean? It doesn't sound like we're on Earth. He goes, you'll figure it out. You're smart. We're aware of you, by the way. That doesn't sound like a good thing. I better stay a little bit lower, in profile. And he goes, no, they're not going to mess with you. it's been a hands off. There's a hands off, been put out about you. I'm like, I didn't ask why. I don't want to know. So, I became aware of a lot of things from that time on, and that's when I really started becoming aware on that submarine, a lot of bizarre things that we were doing. And then the following and that one after that as well. And SSBN was my next one after that, but it was doing things that SSBNs definitely are supposed to be there to launch their missiles, not doing what that one was doing. You're supposed to run away from everything and hide, and we were doing that. I'm like, really, really obviously not what we're supposed to be doing by the so according to the the operating procedures set up by the Secretary of the Navy, SECNAV. So in all of that, the short answer is I became aware of a lot of things, including deep underwater bases, as well as deep underground. In my last tour in Hawaii, I became aware of the tunnels there and actually went to Kaina Point, saw the huge welded shut grating over the huge tunnel going in from Kaina Point. And I climbed that cliff free. By that time, I could climb free easily, the entire cliff with a student of mine, and showed up on top of that. And, Greer's just mentioned, I think lately, that there's a tracking facility up there that's recently built. No, this is 92 when I climbed that. I got up there, 2 Marines came up in a green Jeep and said, "What are you doing here? And how did you get here?" I go, "We climbed the cliff." And he goes, "With no gear?" "Yeah, that's what we do for training." He goes, "Training? What kind of training are you doing? Attempted suicide?" I go, "No, it's easy." And they go, "You can't be here. This is a top secret facility." And I could see all the radar and, phased arrays. It was really obvious. And I thought on the inside, I said on the inside, not anymore unless you kill it as a top secret. But, so then at that point, they took us in the Jeep and took us down and off the base up there and released us. I go, "Well, I can just climb down." They go, "No, we got to make sure that you're off." I know, "You're taking me the wrong side of the island. I have to go around a point now." "Well, that's what we're going to do. So you'll know not to come back up here." I go, "Well, thank you for, dropping us off." And so again, that then opened my eyes so that once I retired, I started driving all over the country and I, looking for the obvious things like where I am now near an Air Force base about 2 miles out in the cottonwood trees in a marshy area, are big, huge concrete square or rectangular pillars coming up about 30 feet above the swamp with access covers on them. And at the edge of the Air Force Base are very tiny buildings with back sloping roofs. And then, of course, massive amounts of phased arrays on that base, and it's a space base. And so, and there's several space bases near it going out from the Front Range towards Kansas and Nebraska that I've stumbled across as well. So when you're looking at that, you go, yeah, it's just like Stargate, where they have emergency exits in case it's been a foothold situation. They're compromised. They need to get out of there. So it's incredibly obvious. And, going up in, coming out of Gunnison, Colorado, driving up, there's a place called Grand Mesa. And as I was driving up there through the forest, I was looking out, and you can see air vents coming up out of the ground in the forest along the side of the road, the highway. I'm like, yeah, air vents for the ground in the forest. It's kind of obvious. So you learn to look and you learn to investigate and then research and how to research. And, through all of that, of decades of research, I've become aware of a lot of things. And then I did have 2 times an actual encounter after I retired with non-terrestrials. One almost killed me with a Borgia, and then another one. And then a couple times later, I was actually, well, I'll let it go to you first. Back to you, Tyler.
Okay, so yeah, I appreciate your explanation of all that and how you even started, putting these pieces together and following the breadcrumbs. And, the signs, the evidence of the underground bases is very much hiding in plain sight. And once you know what to look for, I mean, we drive past this stuff every day, right? So, uh, going back to, the inner earth civilizations and stuff, just briefly for somebody who might not know, like, I kind of explain what you know as far as like the Hollow Earth and the Agartha network and what's going on down there and how they are actually playing a role right now and what's happening on the surface.
Now, so that was into my research and understanding, I have always, since I could first read, wanted to know. I didn't read too much fiction. I wanted to know the nature of the universe and the earth and the planet we're on. And so I started researching, and early on, before they started teaching continental drift, I was looking at maps, and I went to the teacher and I go, looks like these fit together. They go, no, that they work together. I go, then why are the oldest rocks like here on one continent and another piece of it on this other continent, way across the ocean? Then shortly after that, they were teaching a faulted tectonic drift theory of the Earth remains the same size. And it's evident, you can see with the east coast of the Americas in Europe and Africa, they fit. People don't look because the Pacific Ocean is so massive. And big chunks of it, Australia and part of Antarctica, were part of what was known as Lemuria that fit into the Pacific Basin. And the entire planet was one contiguous surface with inland seas over the top of the surface of the one singular plate that was inside and outside. So if you look, and they've done this in the space shuttle in space, where they spin a ball of water with material inside it, it becomes a toroid that's hollow in the middle, and the material that's lighter density goes to the surface due to the spinning forces, centrifugal, and those forces, and the denser stuff goes to the center. Well, in the atomic chart, if you look at the denser stuff, you're talking nuclear materials, plutonium, thorium, uranium, etc., which, if you get enough mass of it, you can start a fission or a fusion process. And so what happened from my studies, I learned this through finding a lot of different papers of PhDs. I published a series of decodes on the expanding and hollow Earth, two of them, one each of the aforementioned topics on my Rumble and my deep dive site. And it goes, he modeled this out. And there's been quite a few people that talked about this. So what you have in the center of the Earth is a low energy nuclear reaction, what is called cold fusion incorrectly. Sun. That creates a gravitational wave because you're breaking the atom, releasing the force of the gravity going in now is refracted back out. That gravity is a push, not a pull. And so it pushes the material out away from that central sun inside the Earth. And then, as on the surface, the volcanism of the current liquid masses the planet was forming gets cooled by water into a solid piece with a kind of like a lollipop with a caramel, wrapper inside, wrapped with solid rock on the outside with magma on the inside. So the inside and outside crust are in total, from the inside crust to the outside crust is about 800 miles. And you have 1,200 mile openings at both poles. And so Admiral Byrd actually flew over and went inside both of them at different times, one after World War II, one just prior to World War II. He met with the Agarthans. They escort him. Their ships have what looks like a swastika if you're not paying attention. It's right. Rotating, the arms are not so it would rotate counterclockwise. They're clockwise because that's an ancient Buddha symbol. It's also a symbol, like you can take a square and draw kind of catacorner, another square, and connect corners and make a 2D representation of a cube on a piece of paper. That's a three-dimensional object represented on a two-dimensional object. Well, a swastika is a two-dimensional representation of a four-dimensional object, what's known as a hypercube, so which goes ultra-dimensional. like the craft do that they have. That's why they put them on those craft. They are a galactic civilization. Every time the surface beings deploy their world, the surface of the earth, they come back and teach basic skills like farming and the wheel and the basic, technologies, the lever, the screw, those types, the wheel, etc. And so they have, for the most part, not messed with the surface people. And so, of course, when Atlantis and Lemuria went to war, and the Lemurians knew, so a whole group of them were able to go and hollow out and get inside Mount Shasta that goes all the way down to the inner earth as well. And quite a few breakaway civilizations have done that. So you have quite a few of them inside, all the way to the inside of the earth, from Mount Shasta or Mount Kalesh, the Valley of the Moon, as well in the Himalayas. Those are all ancient civilizations that work in unison with the Agarthans and the Shambhalans, a whole group of Indians. When the Atlantis finally completely sunk, a part of it is Greenland. There's technologies there. That's why Trump's rumbling about wanting to get that. Art of the deal, kind of famous what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also you have part of Atlantis went inside the earth and became peaceful and became respectful of others. And so the Agarthans and the Atlanteans and all of these inner earth groups have realized now, with the negative alien agenda groups here, that with the scalar weapons and the directed energy weapons and the technology that the dark side has, the entire solar system, galaxy, and universe, because scalar waves increase their devastation as they go out. It doesn't decrease, it increases massively. And so non-terrestrial groups were contacting them saying these weapons that the dark side, the deep state, is using on the surface of the earth will destroy your planet in entirety. Plus, the level of blood sacrifice is starting to create and the time anomalies they're creating through time travel of trying to create their new world order by changing the past is causing, it's getting ready to cause, like what they showed in Doctor Strange and in The Flash and in many others of that Marvel series, where the universe could actually, this universe and parallel universes with it, could collide and annihilate each other. The scalar weapons combined with the blood sacrifices and bringing up beings like through CERN and all this other stuff is causing a situation where we're looking at a total occlusion of more than one universe. And it needs to be stopped, and you need to get involved, or everything goes in. Your planet will be nothing but rubble, like what happened in the Electric Wars in Lyra long ago, before you were even on this planet, before there was even a Milky Way, and that was bad enough. So a whole fallen galaxy you reside in that's going counterclockwise and tilted 55 degrees. So, that has been in progress to heal that, and it's being pulled back from where it came from to Andromeda, and it's starting to heal, and all that can be undone. So you need to get involved. So they are now getting involved. That's why the first thing they did is starting to help and create an Earth Alliance to clean out the tunnels, to stop the blood sacrifices, and to stop the usage of the scalar weapons.
Right. So, yeah, thank you for that beautiful explanation of everything, the Hollow Earth, the Agartha network, and actually, you answered the question beautifully. So, okay, this colliding universe theory, the show Fringe as well, like that was kind of the whole premise of that show, that there was going to be some point where these universes collided and it was going to mean the end of civilization for both universes. And they were, racing to stop that, and they did, and it involved time travel and going to the future, whatever. Like literally, like the Adjustment Bureau type of thing, or the Temporal Management Command, which we just learned about from Dan Cooper. Groups of people that work for the Navy and other factions of the private sector, going and making adjustments and course correcting our timeline whenever deviations are made, and to prevent this from happening. And I do very much think that the Alliance effort right now is doing that. This is much more of a temporal war than most people are ready to even admit. I don't think, the subject of time travel is finally making its way into the conversation a lot more. And once people understand the reality of not just the reality of time travel, but the fact that we are a time traveling civilization, that we've had access to this technology for decades now, potentially going back to the 1800s with Nikola Tesla, it changes everything, and it actually helps make things make a lot more sense. And I think, yeah, this is very much of a temporal war. Time travel's involved, and space operations are involved as well. And I want to go back to you. You mentioned a lot of these space bases that are underground. And when you say space base, are we talking about a base with a Stargate that takes you off planet, or are they actually launching from these bases covertly in a cloaked craft? Are they using dimensional shift technology and traveling in a different dimension entirely? What's actually going on there?
Well, it's quite frequently the case. The answer is all of the above most often. And in this case, it applies.
Right.
They're doing all of these. They have jump gates, they have standard stargates, they have portals. When you go through the entrance, especially the Arctic entrance into the Earth, when you exit that, because of the massive energy field of the negative energy of coming out from the central sun that goes out the Arctic. It's actually the South Pole, not the North Pole. South Pole is negative. It's a negative charge because the positive pole of a compass points at it, which means opposites attract. That's a negative pole, or the South Pole. If you look at a battery, you say the South Pole, the North Pole, which one's north and which one's south, by the way we've decided to look at it. So as you transit, the pole is actually above the pole of the Earth, and it moves. And so if you hit the precise location of that, the energies are so massive of the energy tucking back into the Earth that come out through the equator. It's a U4 toll rate. So you have energy coming out of the equator, and it rolls up and down to the poles, depending on if it's positive or negative. It creates eddy currents as it does that. It separates at the poles. It creates what's called St. Elmo's fire. And then the moving field goes up, and then it tucks and goes into the poles. You have what they call rods of energy coming out of the equator, and then a cone of energy, the cones of the poles, putting the energy back in. So as you exit, it gives you a massive energy potential to do a jump ultra-dimensionally, or even there's different types of travel. You can even go ultra-dimensional or intra-dimensional, where you go to parallel universes. So you can jump to other universes, you can jump to other places in this universe instantaneously this way. What they call blink technology. You focus on it being with singular focus, absolute focus in that moment of exactly where and when you want to be. They have to be able to hold that. And the navigator of the ship is tied to the captain of the ship, and they hold that, and the ship is instantly there. Through the quantum entanglement of the thought that causes the ship, much like you see in Dune, moving without moving. They move to that point, and then they're at the other point instantly. That's how the teleportation works, through quantum entanglement.
Yep.
Changing the frequency of where and when you are to another location in space-time, and then you're just there, like you saw also in the movie where he went back in time, and then he accidentally later looked at a penny from the time he was in, sliding doors. No, I think that was a different thing. That was timeline changes. But he went back in time. Maybe it was called Somewhere in Time. I'm losing track. I watched so many movies because they're very good disclosure of what's actually happening. But he saw a penny and he came back to his own time. And this can be done, and it's done regularly. And then the crossing of those energies, of the energy coming out from the equator, crossing the static lines of flux, like in a bar magnet they show you that the Earth has. They don't show you about the moving one. Is causes a eddy or a cyclonic action of electromagnetic fields that allows for time travel to be done. That's why you see bases where they were doing the Montauk experiment, where they did the Philadelphia experiment, where they don't build nuclear reactors, is on those points. Because if you get critical super mass on that point, you get an explosion called an atomic bomb, mushroom cloud. If it's not on that point, you get a nuclear yield like Chernobyl. That's why they build nuclear reactors where they do, because you have to have coincidence and concurrence with that energy. It means you have to be within 1 minute degree of arc and 1 second of the cross of those ley lines to have a nuclear blast. Otherwise, if you're not on those ley lines, you have a nuclear yield. So they don't build nuclear reactors on them. That's why the testing in the early time at Bikini Beach and all these other locations to find out how this ley line field works. So they can use it both for building nuclear reactors safely and for additionally for traveling interdimensionally and extra-dimensionally and cross-dimensionally.
Yeah. So you bring up some great points as far as the firmament, right? And the flat earthers and this whole thing they just screaming at us. Oh, there's a firmament, we can't get through it. There's nothing but water up there, whatever. The whole narrative. But we're talking about technologies that don't require what we would consider an advanced propulsion system. We're talking about literal dimensional shift technology, temporal advancements that we're actually shifting frequencies, shifting dimensions as they travel, and quantum entanglement, exactly as you said, that allows you to just be in that place. Because all you have to do, like you said, is match the frequency. It doesn't matter where it's at. It could be on the other side of the universe. If you can match that frequency, you can be there in an instant. Just like if you were able to match the frequency of your wall, you could walk through your wall. It's there's technologies involved that people they just don't understand that we've already accomplished. So when we're talking about getting into space, what is your opinion on what the firmament actually is? And is it something that actually is stopping us from traveling out with a physical craft? Or are there holes in that firmament? Are there entry points that have been established that we can, easily pass through? What's going on there?
So it's a electromagnetic field that separates the waters above from the waters below. The waters above in space under massive pressure can be water. You increase the pressure to a point where the electron clouds can still have cohesiveness with the nucleus of the atom. You can have water, and NASA has put out the largest amount of water found in space is enough to cover every planet in the Milky Way 40 feet deep. That's a lot of water. And they're saying they found that in the depths of space in the Milky Way. So the waters above under this massive pressure, the temperatures are phenomenal. So because of that, you have to have an energy field separating something at basically the temperatures of organic life on Earth. So it separates it. But like you said, energy matching, if you frequency match, everything, like Tesla said, is about frequency and vibration. Ninjas learn it at a high level where they can walk through a wall. Mm-hmm. I've actually, in a meditation before a class, I was doing a technique where you rotate your body sitting in a full lotus position and charge all your chakras. And I started sinking into the floor, and I realized it, and I quickly changed the direction of vibration before I solidified halfway into the floor. Because your conscious mind is not your friend at that time. Though you're inside a floor. So then you would stop and you would solidify partway through, like what happened on the Philadelphia experiment. Right. Where when it materialized, people were passed through halfway through the bulkheads and things like that, or through their bunks. So the technology to pass through the Van Allen belt was mastered by the NAZIs in the 30s. It's not something hard, and once you have that technology, you can create an energy field around any craft, even if it's made out of tinfoil, like what they sent to the moon, and it'll isolate it from a vacuum. It'll isolate it, so you can walk around and expand it out like a force field, like they do in Star Trek, and walk around by the domed field and be fine. And so all of this, what people are saying, we can't get through it, and all of this, no, not true. And, they keep going on about also the firmament, the ice wall. There's many, many, many bases in Antarctica there's a huge amount of open areas due to the thermal, the high activity of thermal activities, where under the ice and in an entire area that's ice free. And there's cruises you can now pay a few $1,000s and sail all the way around Antarctica, and they take you up, you camp out up and walk up into these areas where there's no ice at all. And, the NECIs have been doing it. Groups have been doing it before even they did it. And so a lot of what people are putting out, they're not understanding, in the case of the Bible, the terms flat and level. It means if you pitch your tent, you want it flat and level. You're talking to shepherds and people like this and farming, and flat and level is rather important. So right. Flat and level and the earth has four corners. Well, if it's round with an ice wall, then it doesn't have four corners. Don't take everything so literally all the time. Also realize in the process of going from Aramaic to Greek to Hebrew or to Old English to Middle English, there are words that don't even exist. English language is sad when it comes to describing things. Many languages are much more definitive. So if you look at the up in the Alaskan areas with the Native Americans in Alaska, they have hundreds of words for snow because it's their travel. You got to know if it's corn snow. You got to know if it's boilerplate snow. You got to know if it's sugar snow. Well, I don't have to keep putting a descriptive term in to more than one word to describe it. You just have one word for that type of snow. So, for example, love in Greek, you got more than one word. And the same thing goes for describing the earth. There are different words used to describe different things very precisely. So in describing it, the book of Enoch is taken out on purpose because it is full of non-terrestrial encounters with craft, like a wheel within a wheel and a cherubim, like what looks like a TR3, in other words, but it's round instead of triangular. It has these wheelie things of light and all of this stuff. Yeah. So you're talking about these technologies the inner Earth people have had,
right?
Millions of years, millions of years, and they've been there, and they've been galactic with galactic civilizations. Traveling with them. Living with them. There's groups in the inner Earth that are not from this galaxy even, and peacefully, because that is the way of 96% of all beings and planets and groups and species out there. They're peaceful and God-loving and know about they call the one God she, and they are peaceful and peace-loving and God-loving beings, and they're not violent, although they have incredibly high technologies, because they know that you do have the dark groups that follow fallen angelics and other creatures. So they have technologies that are so far advanced. Some of the species have technologies to protect themselves that no one else knows, because when they use them, the enemy is just gone. They're just not there anymore. So, all of that is to explain the nature of the earth, the firmament, the structure of the earth as a toroidal living being with a counter-rotating energy, where the energy goes counterclockwise as it rotates down and clockwise as it rotates up. But realize the earth is flipped upside down because we're a fallen system. So the
Right.
pole should be oriented the other way. We're also going counterclockwise around the sun, looking down on its pole too. So the Earth rotates counterclockwise in a retrograde spin as it goes retrograde around the sun as well. And the sun goes, our solar system goes counterclockwise around the central sun of the Milky Way that's in a, like all fallen systems, in a black hole. Back to you, Tyler.
So what percentage of the inner Earth civilizations do you believe exist in another dimension, in the sense that if we physically traveled down there through a cavern system, would we see them or not? Are they existing in a higher frequency? Are there portals to access them? Or obviously probably both, all of the above, as you said earlier. Is that the case?
All of the above again. You have groups that are, it's the same thing I learned with the deep underground military complexes. You have ones that are in pocket realities. So when you're saying, like you said with Aaron, you put out in your excellent presentation on this, you can't just say, okay, this domain's here, because it could go into another dimension or even a pocket reality, another, essentially its own little universe. So you have these cross-dimensional, cross-density, cross-universe, all kinds of civilizations down there that are in different dimensions, different densities, that depending on an individual's dimension and density, they may or may not experience them, and they may or may not be able to go there. If they use technology to go there and they're not aligned with the frequencies there, and like they're at 5D negative, like an archon, and they go into a 5D positive area, they're fried instantly. They're gone.
That's fascinating. So, yeah, they might not even, or they just simply won't be able to perceive the other beings existing there simultaneously. Like, physics tells us that two things can't occupy the same space, but that's not true if we're talking interdimensional physics, right? If that's even the correct term for that. But I do believe like we can have different layers of civilizations all occupying the same space.
Exactly. You can have a group at 5D, a group at 3D, occupying the same space, while there's many infinite numbers of universes in that same space as well,
Right.
that are differently vibrating depending on choice and how you choose to be as a being, a sentient being, and the general consensus of choice of the consensus of all the beings in that area of how they decide to be. That universe will exist within another vibrational axis of rotation, but be in the same place in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah, this is fascinating. It's amazing how deep this rabbit hole can go when we really start breaking down what this place is, as far as Earth. And, whenever going back to like the inner Earth thing, whenever Admiral Byrd said the land beyond the poles, the flat earthers like to run with that and say, oh, it's the ice wall. But he was talking about the land beyond the poles, meaning within the planet, right? And it is interesting that you claimed that, or he claimed that he saw a swastika and interacted with people that spoke with a German dialect. So it makes you wonder about, the Aryan race and the book, The Coming Race, and the Vril and where all that stuff came from. And I don't think there was always ill intention behind the development of that technology. I just think it got into the wrong hands. And we kind of already went there, but it's just interesting to understand the bigger picture, so we can, if we don't know our true past, we're never going to actually be able to properly move forward because we've been lied to. So it's amazing. We're living in some amazing times, and maybe we could bring this back to the surface a little bit. I wanted to get your opinion on what do you think is truly behind, Trump wanting to merge the US with Canada?
So a lot of Canadians, it would take a referendum, and it wouldn't be as a singular state. It would be by province. Referendums would have to be passed like what Russia did with in Ukraine, where people would vote and decide if they wanted to do that. But it has to do with one of the largest oil reserves and natural gas reserves is a huge shield area that is under parts of the U.S., but the majority of it is under Canada. There's massive reserves of oil and natural gas under Canada. And of course, he's drill, baby, drill. That's a big part of it until these free energies come out. Then additionally, there are technologies, pyramids, which are technologies, in Canada, in various mountainous areas, especially up in the Yukon and areas like that, and entrances to the inner earth as well, that he wants to be able to have access to. So again, it's the art of the deal, and putting that out in, it's long-range preconditioning, putting that into the minds of the people that there's a choice. You don't have to put up with what government you've had. There are other choices. Same with what's going on in Greenland. What the elites do to the Native Americans in Canada, I've talked about on that with Taino, and the mass graves of children they found is horrific, let alone what the elites do in Greenland to the people there. It's horrific. It's not been told. And it's incredibly satanic and evil as heck. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, the technologies there that connect from Greenland to the new northern territories in Canada and certain mountainous regions in the eastern parts of Canada.
So what do you think of the theory that we're just rightfully taking back what has always been ours as far as the land in Canada, because, obviously the borders were created all under, borders are ridiculous anyway. If you really want to think, go down that rabbit hole and discuss the invisible lines that keep us all separated, but maybe this land always belonged to us and we're just taking it back. Have you heard that theory? And would you agree with that?
Actually, the first sentient species on this sphere, radial being called Earth, originally it orbited Tiamat, and right. It was a moon of Tiamat called Kingu, before it was displaced when Tiamat was destroyed and brought into orbit where it is now. And then later the moon was a space ark brought here and locked into position as a space station by negative groups to control the Earth as part of a soul trap situation, as well as many other things. A kind of a launching base and a way to have bases on the backside, so it's in a tidal lock where you never see most of the backside, so they can build anything they want back there. And so the humans didn't originally come from this galaxy at all. And so the beings that were originally here is actually correctly stated by, Carrie Cassidy is correct saying that it was the raptors. And then when the Draco came here and engineered the huge carnivores like the T-Rex and other such species, the dinosaurs started to have the reptilian types started to have severe problems. And that's when the war down here started. And that was about 300 million years ago. So that was the beginning of them trying to wrestle it away from the raptors, and then humans were involved in that at the same time. We were here. At that time, Atlantis was, for the most part, not very developed, but Lemuria was quite developed and very technologically advanced and spiritually advanced. So in all of that, the human species, has gone through a series of forced moves. So however, it's been recognized that the surface basically is bequeathed to the human species. So the Homo carpensis have been hiding amongst us as well as mankind, which is another creature. It's a chimera, but it's interbred with the human species quite heavily now. And so you have all of these interneted kind of, or spider webbed things mixed into each other. So it's sorting this all out now. Like Trump calls it the swamp, or if you look at the back of the dollar bill, or the front of the dollar bill, the spider web with the spider in it and the owl and all that other stuff. It's sorting all of this out to who owns what. And, it's like the Gaza or any place in the Middle East you go, who owns it? Well, how far do you want to go back? It's ours, it's the Native Americans. Well, even before the Native Americans, you're talking Lemurians. Before that, you're talking Hyperborea. Before that, you're talking Ugar and Polaria. It just goes back and back and back.
Right.
But again, you have basic species. So it's been decided for the most part by the Alliance that this planet should belong to the human species.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a very fascinating approach. The Raptors, this is something that's come up through a number of testimonies. Captain Mark Richards, even his ex-wife now, she has talked about encountering the Raptors through him. But there's been even like game cams that have caught what look like velociraptors, and whether or not that's fake or real, I don't know. But I think they do still reside here. I think there is a hominid, like a bipedal humanoid hominid type of raptor. But I think there might be even an actual velociraptor similar to what we've seen in the movies as well. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. You also have, what they call Bigfoot.
Right.
That's actually just a species that they've said is no longer here, it's gone extinct. Several different ones, actually, that are the Neanderthals that never went and Cro-Magnon types that are different types of those. There's other ones as well. And they're actually interdimensional capable beings. They can, by their own abilities within who they are, they can travel interdimensionally.
Right.
So, that's why they track them, and then they just suddenly can't find them and the tracks disappear.
Mhm.
They're very peaceful, and they're in remote areas because humans are not very nice. They like to hunt them and others. So all of this goes into, the different, who owns the planet again.
Mhm.
So to relegate areas for those species, the Sasquatch or whatever you want to call them, the humans, etc.
Right. So one last thing before we start wrapping this up. Max Spears, I'm sure you're familiar with him. He used to talk about land in the South Pacific that is, cloaked from human civilization, that would essentially be what we would understand as Jurassic Park, where they're doing genetic experiments. They have, dinosaurs still exist, and animals and creatures that aren't supposed to be real exist, but they're just in captivity on these land masses that have been hidden from humanity. Have you heard anything of that nature?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely true. And the deep state even has technology, as does the Alliance, to hide within energy fields entire islands
Right.
and bases.
Yeah, that's one thing I think that the flat earthers make a good point when they talk about flight patterns and why don't they just go this way and that way? Why don't they take the shortest route? Well, I believe that there are cloaked land masses that the pilots are basically they're averting. They're directed to go around these land masses because it's not because the earth is flat. It's because there are no fly zones because of continents essentially that we aren't supposed to know about.
Exactly. They don't want certain things known.
Hmm.
And additionally, flying over those vast fields of energy can interfere with the technologies of the aircraft that make the aircraft stay in the air. So it's dangerous for an aircraft, our aircraft are pretty darn fragile. It's essentially an aluminum can. It's not much stronger than an aluminum can. You fly a jet aircraft with a bird strike and it takes the plane out.
Right.
It can crash a plane. It's certainly not going to fly through a steel building. It's not going to have its nose come out the other end either. So, if you look at our aircraft, even technologically, flying through energy fields like what they're using in Ukraine for the Su-25 and 27 that the Russians use, the technologies, the jamming technologies, that would crash a commercial craft. They can't fly through that. The stuff that hides an island, you might take the plane apart or move it into another reality. The plane would never be seen again. It wouldn't crash, but it wouldn't be on this earth or in this universe even possibly. So there's a reason why they are instructed and given, flight paths that's where they fly, and you do not fly over this area.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I believe that, as we move forward, conversations like this are just going to keep, penetrating the collective consciousness and opening the minds of millions. And, these disclosures are happening now, whether they're, a controlled narrative. I know, a lot of the information is still being, maintained by gatekeepers and, prominent figures and talking heads and, the government approved whistleblowers. But regardless, we are moving forward. Every bit of this disclosure, whether it's controlled or not, is acting as a stepping stone to something much bigger. And before we know it, this planet's not going to be unrecognizable in a good way. And, I think we're well on our way into a golden age, and we have solidified a positive timeline. I understand it's not going to be pretty along the way, but we're here for it. And I just want to thank you again for coming on and joining us, or me. I'm so used to saying us. Unfortunately, Aaron couldn't be here today, but thank you, Gene. And did you want to leave us with any last words before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I wanted to share with people real quick the document I did on expanding Earth so people can research that for themselves. It's on my Rumble Real Gene Decode. I got this information, as you can see here, is the core of where it comes from, the Earth Continental Drift Theory pioneers. Robert Mantavini, 1889-1909, Earth Expansion and Continental Drift. And I have documents showing from these various pioneers. The big ones are Professor Sam Carey and Dr. James Maxwell. So here's a long list of people, and I show the models they came up and show the proof for the fact that the Earth is expanding in the continental drift and how it actually works and all of that. And then I would say, the next thing and the closing thing I wanted to say is be careful of what you say and what you think, because you're setting a frequency within yourself. And we're coming to what's called a shift, or as they call it, the Masonic ring or the coronal mass emission event. And in that, there'll be a change in frequency alignments. The two timelines, actually three, there's a crossover timeline in between the Armageddon line and the positive golden age line that we're currently on, where people can cross back and forth through how you decide to talk and be and think and envision and pray and act with every single thought, feeling, deed, action you do. So if you're a person that's trying to be kind and considerate and respectful and keep your business to your business and envision good things for the earth and the people and the land and the planet as a whole, and technologies coming out and peace on earth and no more wars, you wind up setting a positive vibration for yourself that others passing you will vibrate, and you will come together as a cohesive whole on a planet that is cohesive in that manner. And when you come outside the CME, you will be in the golden age. We're processing in that way now. It's not very far. If you're a person that is, lying and just attacking other people all the time and vengeful and angry and pissed off and wanting wars and doing all of these things, especially like the deep state, wanting wars, satanic sacrifice, or you're just a person that's mean and nasty and lying to get your vengeance on others, you're setting a vibration within yourself That's to a vibration of Satanism, of satanic sacrifice, of darkness, of Armageddon, of death and dying and disease, because that's the vibration of that. So be careful what you think and what you feel and what you do. And for those that are vibrating in the negative, for those of us in the positive, disengage. Disengage. I don't even think about it. Don't even go there. Don't even look there. Stay to the good platforms. There's platform wars that are instrumented by Davos on purpose because they lost control of the narrative. And they keep trying to do all of these infiltrations and dividing, having us divide ourselves through attacking others. Don't drop to that. Don't attack others. Don't do hit pieces. Don't do this. If you want, that's your choice. But it darkens your soul. The luminosity of the soul starts to go out because you're engaging in destructive activities, thoughts, feelings, and emotions. Put out as much truth as you can. Be as kind and considerate. Do random acts of kindness. Even if it makes you a few minutes late when somebody needs help, give the help. Put yourself in a sphere of kindness and giving and truth, and keep your nose out of other people's business and their private lives and all of these things. Pay attention to what is the truth in your life, and kind to animals, and how somebody's private is their business. That's how they are dividing the truthers, is getting well, this person's that or this person's doing that, and get us to attack each other. There's so much going on in the world to not be worried about some one individual here or that individual there. Yeah, there's the P. Diddy thing. That's a world level thing, because what's going on there is frazzle drip and everything else. And it's about the children. And then, of course, you have the big groups, even bigger groups, like, the big ones in the politicians and, all of that. P. Diddy's big. He's at the Epstein level. They're all part of that same thing. And the Richard Branson thing that I came out on, Kirsten W. and the A-list and all of that. So all that's coming out, and you can report on that. Be careful not to focus your energies all the time into something so negative. Even the horrific stuff going on in California. Watch animal videos and see animals rescuing each other and how the animals are changing, and people doing really kind things for other people, and do that too. When you have old clothes, I have an old down jacket that I was sitting in front of the fireplace, and I can put my hands in the flame, and I didn't think about the fact I'm wearing a down jacket and a nylon covering, and I put my hands in the flame for 15, 20 seconds to warm up, and I melted the jacket. So I patched it, cut the melt off, and give it to a homeless person. Do things and think kindly and respectfully and loving of other people. And if they don't resonate with that, just walk away somewhere else. Do the things like Tyler and Aaron are doing, and other podcasters that aren't attacking other people. There's so much other stuff to report. There's so much knowledge coming out. The disclosure, the end of the situation in the Middle East, the collapsing of the situation, 100,000 defections this year in Ukraine, their army's falling apart. It's the end of the Bandera stuff coming to an end. That's a good thing. The wars, they're advancing constantly. The majority of the Ukrainians are just throwing their weapons away and running. And that's a good thing. So they're not dying anymore. They're, being taken to Russia and all this. So we want to have the end of conflict, the end of war, the end of killing, the end of death. There's room for everybody on this planet. Do the math. 8 billion people on the surface of just the Americas. You have more than a quarter acre. If you divide it by 3, so you have 1/3 for the people and other thirds for, farms and land for driving and parks and all of this, and the rest of the earth is empty, let alone if we have technology to go to other planets that are completely free of anything of a sentient high level. So there's whole planets with nobody on it. So that technology out there, the human race would be spread so thin you'd have to have an internet to find somebody to get married to and have kids, So there's plenty of room had those technologies been let. And so don't fall for the greed of wanting to have things like the way Mel Gibson said he lost his home, and it's stuff. It's stuff. And yeah, you have memories and stuff, but we'll make more, and life goes on. So, and even leaving the corporeal existence, you don't end. Unless you darken your soul with actions of the type I mentioned to the point you cannot go through ascension, and you're essentially fall to a point that it's done. You're stuck. You disintegrate when your corporeal vessel goes, because you don't have enough left of your soul and your inner spirit of the light of the Holy Spirit left in you. You've darkened it out of being angry all the time, vengeful and all the time and all that. So, this stuff is hard. So if you're watching all this stuff all the time, take time at the end of the day to walk your dog, your cat, hug your kids, kiss your kids, be with your family, turn off the TV, sit and talk. How's school? How are you doing? How are you today? How was your day? Find the love and compassion and truth within your family and within your home. And if you're alone, go out in nature and say hello to people and wish them good day, and, hug a tree and talk to the trees and be out in God's true temple of nature, the place where you find God. So thank you, Tyler, for having me here, and God bless.
Yeah, that was absolutely beautifully said. Thank you for that closing message. And we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you guys all for being here with us. We love you. We can't do this without you. Take Gene's advice and, go hug a tree and, focus on the positive things. We're in an age where things are instantly manifesting, and, your thoughts and your choices can literally mean a difference of choosing a lower or a higher timeline in every instance. So be aware where your thoughts and your focus goes. And, just see the positive future, and things will become brighter, I promise. But we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Just a reminder, if you want to come hang out with us in Grafton in May, tickets are available. JourneyToTruth.online. We have a great lineup this year. It's a beautiful venue. It's our last year in Grafton before we move locations. So if you have been wanting to come out there and you haven't had a chance, just take advantage of that, because it's going to be a blast. We can't wait to see you guys out there. And we are going to the Cahokia Mountains again afterwards. All that information is on the website, and that is below in the description. We love you. Have a great evening. Good night. Hello, and welcome to Conference Phone. If you know the name of the conference you'd like to attend, press 1.
Come on.
Using your touch-tone keypad, please enter the first 3 letters of the conference title now. You've selected Secret Space Conference? If that is correct, press 1.
What?
You've selected Full Disclosure Now. If this is correct, press 1. Why don't you just tell me the name of the conference you'd like to attend?
Rebels of Disclosure?
To find the venue nearest you, please enter your 5-digit zip code now. Why don't you just tell me where you want to attend the conference?
Pierre Marquette Lodge and Conference Center?
Rebels of Disclosure is playing at the Pierre Marquette Lodge and Conference Center in Grafton, Illinois, May 12th through 15th, 2025.
Yeah, now I got you.
If you would like to purchase tickets, please visit JourneyToTruth.online now.